Thank you for listening. My name is James Schofield. I am the host of the James Schofield Ministries podcast. We're going to be discussing on the show something that can be very emotional for some people. We're going to be discussing sexual violence. So if that's something that you feel you wouldn't be able to listen to, I want to ask you right now, please just hit that stop button. And today we're going to do something a little bit different. We have a guest on the show by the name of Jessica Sturm. She was a participant in the Every 2 Minutes documentary from MSU students, and she was a former MSU Sexual Assault Crisis Intervention Vice President, and she's someone who came from Christianity to agnosticism and back to it again. So we're going to be talking to her a little bit about that. So first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show, Jessica.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, kind of to start out, we'll just start right at the beginning, and we'll talk about your upbringing, and we're going to go straight to why Christianity in the beginning. What kind of church did you attend? What denomination would you say you were? And just a general knowledge of your faith.
Okay. I wasn't raised in a religious household by any means, but when I was in 6th grade, I was friends with this girl, and she invited me to go to youth group at her Baptist church. So I started doing that, and I really enjoyed it. Like, I loved all the songs and the dancing, and, kids' church is fun. They had me go to camp that year, and that's the year that I was saved. So that was the start of it. Unfortunately, that didn't last very long, though, because the girl that I was friends with, her mom... she told her mom that I did something. I can't even remember all the details. It was so long ago. She told her mom that I did something that I didn't do. She actually did it. And her mom got my mom involved. And her mom was like, all right, Jessica, bye. You can't be around my daughter anymore. And I was like, oh, that's wonderful. And she was a pretty influential person in the church. And, without them, I didn't feel like a way to go or a desire to go, because I didn't want to be at a place where, I wasn't wanted.
Okay. So you were kind of going to you said a Baptist church?
Yes.
Okay. And, you stopped going just because you kind of didn't feel that's where they didn't want you to be there. Would you say, though, that prompted you to walk away from Christianity?
Not really. I still believed in God, and we still had, conversations and everything, so, I just figured that wasn't the church for me, clearly. She also got rid of the youth pastor there, too, so I was just the entire church was something completely different. But seeing as that was my only religious friend, I didn't really have any other churches to go and I was too young to pick one, so I just didn't go to church. Okay.
So what about your parents? Would you say that they just weren't practicing, or they didn't personally believe?
They don't believe.
Okay. So this was pretty much a journey that you were just taking on your own.
Yes.
And it was something that you had with your friend. And you said, so through that, you became a believer. It's just that particular church just didn't work out for you. And you, would you say that you were able to find a church at all during that time?
No. I didn't go to church again until 2011.
Okay. Well, not necessarily going to church, obviously, isn't the defining moment of making you a believer. So you still believed, but you weren't processing a church. But then you have told me in the past that you became more of an agnostic. So for listeners who don't realize what agnostic is, there's several different definitions around it. So some people just say that it's strictly that I know that there is a God, I just don't know what the God is. Some people think that it's just a higher power in general, and they're not sure. Or some people are even getting to the point where I don't think that there is a higher power, but I can't say for sure yet, so they don't want to go full-blown atheist. So you said you went agnostic, which most Christians are going to say that that would be like a walk away from Christianity, I guess. So what would you say was your the defining moment or the events that led up to that walk away?
It was a
It's okay, take your time.
I mean, there was a bunch of bad stuff that just happened, like, one after another. So I was at Michigan State, and my friend that I was living with, her boyfriend made a pass at me, and I turned him down. But the next day, he, in order to cover himself, told her that, I made a pass at him, and she believed him. So they went on my Facebook page and tagged a lot of really mean things about me. Calling me a whore and all sorts of stuff like that. And it was towards the end of the semester, so rather than stay at MSU, because it was halfway through the school year, I just left and I went home. While I was at home, I I rekindled old friendships there, and I ended up going to a party. And while there, I was raped by 3 people in the backyard. And, I don't know, that event itself wasn't enough, to make me stop believing in God. I just, I, at the time, didn't really fully accept what had happened, so it was easy to just continue living. And then, those friends also abandoned me because one of my friends, her sister, lied and said that I gave her alcohol and made her drunk. So her parents threatened to take me to court and all sorts of other stuff. So I was like, well, not wanted to hear either. So I went back to state to, meet new people and everything. And that ended up fine. I made a lot of new friends, and I got a new boyfriend, and it was great. Unfortunately, second semester at MSU, I got together with some old friends of mine from my first year at state, and one of them spent the night, and he raped me. And that was the moment. Because, I'm fine. I mean, not fine, but I could handle strangers. But I can't handle someone I trust. And actually, he was religious, too. So, someone who follows God is capable of doing something like that. I don't know, it was terrible. And what was worse is that it hurt everybody around me. Like, my boyfriend had to go to therapy. My dad, lost it. And watching all those people get hurt obviously hurt me. So, I don't know. I just felt really alone.
Would you say that, obviously it's a hard thing to kind of bring back up, but would you say that the fact that you knew that he was a believer helped contribute to kind of your thoughts that there might not be something out there, or that what you were believing, not necessarily that there wasn't something out there, but the actual, for lack of a better term, person or power that you were believing in wasn't the one that was right?
I mean, yeah. I don't know. It's supposed to be that people who are religious, and follow God, they're supposed to have, like, rules, like, you're not supposed to hurt somebody like that, and, he did. So that was the start of me thinking, like, oh, like, religious people really aren't great. So I had that friend and her mom first, start issue with me, and then this guy, and I don't know, I didn't have any good experiences to draw from with people who were religious.
Right. So you weren't raised in it, obviously, so this was completely on your own as well, and exactly, so from your experience, you didn't really have like a positive, I guess, religious role model to kind of look to. You would have those moments, like you were saying, like at first the church was okay, and then you would run into the issues, and then you meet somebody else who's religious, and then he, does this awful thing to you. But you had told me, though, that kind of wasn't the end, I guess, of your journey there, or I guess your walk with God during that time. You said that you had attempted almost in a way to save it, right?
Yes. I still didn't want to give up. So I was going to group therapy, and one of the girls there was also religious, and she invited me to go to her church with her, and it was a Catholic church, and I was like, yeah, sure, because I'd been part of me had wanted to go back to church, because I was still holding on to the good memories, from when I was younger. So I was like, yeah, like, we'll give it a try. And that was awful. I have nothing against people who are Catholic or the Catholic Church or whatever. Well, I have some things against them, but if going to a Catholic church is what assists you in your journey with God, that's fine. Power to you. But it really was not for me. I got there, and, it's not like they have a screen up that says, stand up, sit down, kneel, mumble these words, pat someone on the back next to you or whatever. But these people it was like a hive mind. They all knew what to do. They all knew what to say. It didn't feel like worship to me. It felt like something that had been rehearsed. It didn't feel real. And no one there helped me. I went to go get my bread, and the guy just stood there and wouldn't even hand it to me because I didn't know what to say to him. So I just stood there with my hands outreached, and he just stared at me. And I'm like, I wasn't raised Catholic. I haven't gone to the Catholic schooling. I don't know what I'm supposed to say. So I just said, peace be with you. And I was like, I hope that's right. And he handed me the bread, so I was like, oh, cool. Like, I unlocked the magic words all on my own. Thanks. So after that, I don't know. They did the classic, like, oh, everybody turn and, meet someone new, shake hands. And at that point, those people were all smiling at me and touching me. And first off, I really hate being touched. Not so much anymore, but at that time, obviously, I really hated it. So they're just violating my space. And based on all my previous experience with religious people, those smiles were so fake to me. Even if they were genuine, which I'm sure they were, because they were probably nice people, I don't know. But after, like, seeing what I interpreted as, like, almost like cult-like. And I apologize if that's offensive, but it did feel really cult-like to me because I didn't grow up with it. So after seeing all that cult-like behavior, I don't know, the hand shaking and the smiling at me just wasn't real. They didn't ask my name or how I was doing. They just, shook my hand and walked away.
Right. So you would say that experience was almost, I guess, in a way, like a nail in the coffin, in a way, where it's like, you know what, that this is the time to walk away from it. So, kind of backtracking to where you're trying to figure this out, where basically, I guess, every time you're getting towards this God that you're starting to get to know, something happens to hurt you. Whether it's something small, just, such as, I guess not small, but small compared to the other things where, you have disagreements with the church, people in the church, or obviously the tragedy that happened to you. I guess the question is, it kind of made me think of the story of Job in the Bible, and it's in chapter 7, verse 20, where he actually asked God flat out, "If I have sinned, what have I done to you, Watcher of humanity? Why have you made me your target so that I have become a burden to you?" Would you say that when all these things were happening to you, that's kind of a question that might come to your mind, is like, why is it happening to me?
Yeah.
I mean, did you ever feel during that time that you happened to have a response back from him?
No. I felt abandoned. And I still tried, but it's hard to keep trying when everything's just bad.
Yeah, you didn't feel like you were getting any sort of answer.
Yeah, every time I would try, I would just encounter somebody else who sucked, to be frank.
Right. So, what did eventually, because obviously you and I, we both attend church now, and I actually had the pleasure of being able to baptize you. And so what would you say eventually led you back to the church and back to Christianity?
Baby Grace.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we started going to that church, and, the very first talk was about, what was it?
It was the How to Neighbor series that they were doing.
No, well, it was something along the lines of, like, is what you're doing right now, are you living your best life, basically?
Oh, right.
It was that one.
Yeah, it was the 3 Ps, I think. They were doing, like, purpose. I can't remember all of them, but purpose, I think, was the one that we were learning about.
Yes, we were there at Purpose.
Right.
And, I don't know, we were having a hard time. I had a terrible job. And we go to this thing, and he's like, "Oh, are you living your best life? And, you're living your life with purpose and all this stuff." And I was just like, no. Like, so, I went home, and we re-enrolled me at MSU so I could finish my degree. I quit my job. I got a new one. I was like, here we go. Like, we're gonna try this again. And I would keep going. That talk that day is the reason why I was able to keep going back. But honestly, even going there was really hard. Because, and I know that these people are good people, but I would still see the fake smiles and, the well-meaning handshakes that didn't feel real. And, after every time we went, I would actually get in the car and cry every time we left. And, I was so closed off that nobody really spoke to me. They just all spoke to you. Because you're so charismatic and you just absorbed it so well.
Right.
And here I am just sitting there on the couch feeling like I don't belong here. You know, like, if these people are genuinely as happy as they portray, then I definitely don't belong here. But then Baby Grace started to exist, and suddenly, you know, people had something to talk to me about, you know, because I'm not putting this on them, obviously. I wasn't receptive to anything. But with Baby Grace, they have a reason to talk to me, you know, and something they can relate to me on. So there was a way that they could finally open communication with me, that I was excited to talk about. And, you know, obviously I couldn't really talk to them about religion, which is all that we would have been talking about before, so I didn't, yeah, but once Baby Grace arrived, I was able to, relate to them, which made me more open to things. And what helped too, honestly, was, you know, during worship time, I would just stand there because I'm like, I'm not participating in this.
Right.
But the worship leader at the time, Leo, he'd be up there and he would just feel it, and it was so real. So that did something for me too. You know, that's what started to chip away at me. It was the first religious thing I'd seen that wasn't rehearsed.
Right, having that raw kind of just genuine worship. You really didn't feel that before.
Right.
Okay. So, you know, we kind of came almost full circle, and you know, you started out with Christianity, exploring it on your own, which, you know, I do have to say that, I mean, that's a very brave thing to do, because, you know, when you're raised, you know, I was raised in the same kind of household where there wasn't really religion. I know it's a hard thing to do, so for you to even explore that was awesome, but to have these things all happen to you, and then eventually you do get to the point where you're able to accept him again, if you could look back on everything, you know, knowing that God is there and God was there during that time, what would you say would be God's purpose in letting those events unfold?
Well, you know, what happened changed everything about who I was. You know, I was really selfish, and the world revolved around me. It was very dramatic. I didn't take responsibility for anything. And then, you know, after what happened and the programs that I got involved with, you know, I was helping survivors of sexual assault, and so the world didn't revolve around me. It revolved around whoever I was speaking to at the time. And a lot of them, you know, people who have watched the documentary I was in, or, you know, that I spoke with about my journey, a lot of them have come forward to, like, tell me how much it's improved their lives. And someone even told me that, you know, I helped prevent suicide. So clearly there was a reason. You know, not only did everything make me a better person, but I helped others. And I forgot the rest of the question.
No, that's actually what his purpose was for you. So kind of elaborate on that. Actually, I was remembering you were talking about the documentary, and you were actually telling a story about that, and I think that kind of almost makes it kind of concrete what his purpose was in letting things unfold. And you were talking about a story that you were doing with one of the organizations at MSU. I think it was with putting shirts and, you know, different clothing up.
The Clothesline Project.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the story that you were talking about in the documentary with a guy who had approached you about that. Well,
you should just watch the documentary and see.
Yeah. So.
Okay, so I was at an event for Take Back the Night, which is a organization that protests sexual assault, raises awareness, educates the community, stuff like that. And one of the things they do is set up the Clothesline Project, which are shirts made by survivors and co-survivors, which is, somebody who was also affected by the assault of a loved one. And they hung them up in the middle of campus, right by the clock tower. So it's like it's in the center campus. So in the middle of the school day, so there's tons of people walking by looking at these shirts, and I'm staffing one of the booths for the sexual assault team, and a guy comes up to me and he asks me why I'm there, and I tell him, I'm there. I explain the Clothesline Project and everything, and he's like, but you shouldn't be out here. If something like this happens, you should just keep it to yourself and let the police handle it. Like, there's no reason for you to be, like, in everyone's face about it, basically. And I was telling him, I was like, but the police can't always do anything. And the majority of people who commit these crimes never even see a day of jail. So how is keeping it to myself, going to change anything? And, we went back and forth for a while, and he went to the booth next to me and started arguing with her too. And then he eventually walked away. But then he ended up coming back later, and, he went down several booths. That's what it was. He went to the SANE nurses. He talked to everybody. And then he came back, and he very quietly, told me that he had been assaulted when he was younger. And he didn't feel like anyone would have believed him before. But I told him I did. So that, I would hope, was the start of his journey. Accepting what happened. And I really hope that he was able to talk to somebody else about that after.
So would you say that you would have not even just talked to this person, but even bumped into this person had the events that happened to you that one night, had they not had happened?
Oh, absolutely not. There were who knows where I'd be right now if that hadn't happened. I don't even know. I honestly, as terrible as it was, like, I honestly believe I wouldn't be in such a good place now, and obviously I wouldn't undo it, because if I truly did help people along my journey, I would never give that up.
Yeah, so, looking back on it, we would say, God's purpose in these events happening was really, it's almost, I guess, not to say that you being the way that you were, where you were saying it was kind of all about you, and you didn't take accountability for things. Not to say that that's similar to addiction, but, they have that saying where, like, with addiction, you can't help anybody until they've hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
There has to be that rock bottom. Would you say that was almost, in a way, God letting it happen is almost like his way of allowing that rock bottom to happen for you so that way you could pick yourself back up?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So then if you could, give insight to someone else who might be wrestling with faith due to not necessarily a tragedy similar to yours, but a tragedy in general, what kind of insight would you give to them if they're wrestling with that faith?
I would just say, take your time. I'm never going to be the type of person to, tell somebody going through that, God has a reason for everything. That's not something that you want to hear. So honestly, all I would tell them is whatever they're feeling, that's okay. If you're angry, hurt, you feel betrayed, feel those things. Don't force yourself to forgive God because you feel like you have to or somebody's telling you to. You need to come to that on your own. And don't force it.
Yeah, so kind of bringing up that point then, we always as Christians are talking about God forgiving us, and you actually just mentioned forgiving God for having something happen. And I think that that's kind of a big deal because there are times, and that you do blame God for things that happen. Would you say that at this point that you've forgiven God for everything that's happened to you?
Yes.
And so kind of looking at everything and seeing where you've come, you said, after everything that happened, you started helping other people, who were going through different things, kind of similar to what you were going through. And then eventually you were saying that no matter how bad it got, you eventually got to the point where, you found a new job, you did graduate, you've now found a community, with God, you have a baby on the way. I mean, you have all these things. Would you say that in a way that's almost God restoring the things that you might have had before you got brought down?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I don't know if it's restoring because some of these things I feel like I never would have had.
So it gave you even more than what you had.
Yeah.
Okay. And that kind of brings it right to, because kind of when we were first talking about doing this story, I did start thinking about, kind of a character in the Bible that kind of went with, and I did mention Job kind of questioning, why God was doing all this. And in the book of Job, in chapter 42, verses 10 through 12, that kind of is almost kind of with your story. It says that after Job had prayed for his friends, the Lord restored his fortunes and doubled his previous possessions. All his brothers, sisters, and former acquaintances came to him and dined with him in his house. They sympathized with him and comforted him concerning all the adversity the Lord had brought on him. Each one gave him a piece of silver and a gold earring. And in the end, at verse 12, he says, "So the Lord blessed the last part of Job's life more than the first. He owned 14,000 sheep and goats, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 female donkeys." So that sounds a little bit strange, but it's because Job was, he had a farm. and during the time that Job was being tested, he lost his farm, he lost his children, he, pretty much lost everything. He lost his health, his wealth, his family. And so at the end it says that not only did God restore what Job had, he restored it doubled. So he restored it twofold. And so kind of what you were going through, it wasn't just, I would say, and obviously disagree with me if you need to, but it wasn't just that you were being tested, but like you said, you wouldn't have had those experiences afterward with helping other people on their journey, and even yourself journey of how you felt before. You wouldn't have had those changes if that hadn't happened. So, not only would you say God was molding you, but he obviously was testing you as well. And even though you questioned him, just as Job questioned him in the story, you would say that God still, once you came back, he restored everything, and not only did he restored it, he doubled it.
Yeah.
So at this, I do want to say, it's an amazing story that you shared, and obviously that's a huge vulnerability, to let others hear of your story, and it's a lot of courage too, because obviously, personally, as Christians, a lot of times we don't like to show any chinks in our armor, And by showing that and sharing your story, I think that speaks mounds to how far you've come as a person in general. And for everybody who's listening, if they do want to take a look at this documentary that Jessica was talking about, it's right on Vimeo. It's vimeo.com/every2minutesfilm. That's 2 spelled out, so TWO. So vimeo.com/every2minutesfilm. You'll see it's not long. It's only about a 45-minute documentary. But there's also survivor interviews on there as well. And you can hear more about the story that Jessica told us, as well as her interview about the events that led up to what we were talking about today. So Jessica, again, I want to say thank you for allowing me to record this and getting it out to everybody.
And thanks for having me.
And I want to thank everybody for listening. If you do have any comments, feel free to go right on the website, SchofieldMinistries.org. If you hit the podcast link, you can leave comments there. If you did like what you were hearing, I do want to invite you to like and subscribe either on Apple Podcasts, or you can also listen to us on whatever podcasting service you're listening to now, of course, or we're also on Google Podcasts, Google Play Music, TuneIn Radio, and Anchor. Once again, I'm James Schofield with James Schofield Ministries. We will have another episode next Saturday. Thank you so much for listening.